You know what's strange? We talk endlessly about boomers and millennials. We dissect Gen Z like they're some kind of fascinating new species. But there's an entire generation sitting right in the middle, barely mentioned, almost invisible. Generation X. Born roughly between 1965 and 1980, they're the older co-workers who never complain, the parents who seem oddly detached sometimes, the people who literally built the internet but never post about their breakfast. And here's what nobody tells you. Their psychology is probably the most misunderstood of any living generation. They were the first generation of latchkey kids on a massive scale. Picture this. It's 1978. You're 8 years old and you come home to an empty house because both your parents are working. No smartphone, no cameras at the door, no way for anyone to check if you're okay. You let yourself in, make yourself a snack, do your homework alone, and wait. A study published in the American Journal of Orthopsychiatry found that by 1984, roughly 7 million children between ages 5 and 13 were regularly left unsupervised after school. That's an entire generation learning one brutal lesson. You cannot always count on someone being there. That empty house did more than make them self-reliant. It drilled in the idea that actions carry real consequences, ones you can't sweet-talk your way out of. When their parents finally walked through that door, you always knew exactly where you stood. The rules came down hard and fast. Nobody was interested in how you felt about it. Nobody wanted to sit down and talk it through. You stepped out of line, and you paid for it, right then and there. Psychologically, this created what researchers call a high-contingency environment, a world where actions and outcomes were directly linked with no buffer in between. Your brain learned to map consequences in real time, which is exactly why Gen X tends to think 3 moves ahead in ways that genuinely baffle younger generations. Gen X grew up watching their parents talk a big game about stability, then turn around and drive divorce rates through the roof across the 70s and 80s. They watched people give everything to their companies, only to get handed a pink slip when the next wave of layoffs rolled in. Everyone kept telling them the same thing. Work hard, follow the rules, and life will take care of itself. But then the rules just changed right in front of their eyes. Psychologists might call it defensive pessimism. Gen X just calls it being realistic. It's not that they're cynical exactly. It's more like they built up this emotional armor over time. They hope for good things, sure, but deep down, they always expect the rug to get pulled out from under them. Because honestly, that's what kept happening. And that right there is a big reason you barely see them on social media. They grew up in a time when privacy was simply the default. When you messed up as a kid, maybe a handful of people found out, and that was the end of it. No phones recording, no viral clips, just some awkward memories in a basement or a parking lot. The idea of broadcasting your entire life for strangers to judge? That doesn't feel exciting to them. It feels dangerous. It's not that they don't understand technology. It's that they learned early on that the less people know about you, the safer you are. Gen X essentially turned irony into a defense mechanism. Crack a joke, keep things at arm's length, laugh it off before it has a chance to sting. And you can trace exactly where that comes from. They grew up in the long shadow of the Cold War, when teachers talked about nuclear annihilation like it was just another item on the schedule. Duck and cover drills in school, as if hiding under a desk would save anyone from anything. When the adults around you act like the world could end any minute, but also insist you shouldn't worry about it, you get used to holding two completely contradictory ideas in your head at the same time. And you learn to keep a little emotional distance, just in case. But here's what's truly fascinating. Despite all of this, Gen X developed a distinctive approach to work that still stands out today. They don't talk about it. They don't post about it. They just do it. This work ethic was forged early through jobs that seem almost archaic now. Paper routes at 5 in the morning, bagging groceries after school, working fast food registers where you had to calculate change in your head when the machine went down. These weren't resume builders or character-building exercises. They were raw introductions to the adult world, where a 12-year-old could be personally responsible for delivering the morning news to an entire neighborhood. They watched their parents' generation get crushed by corporate restructuring, so they never bought into the idea of company loyalty. But they became fiercely loyal to their own competence. They couldn't control whether they'd get laid off, but they could absolutely control whether they'd be the most valuable person in the room when those layoffs came. There's a strange paradox sitting at the core of Gen X psychology. They are simultaneously the most independent generation and the most quietly collaborative one. They will never ask for help. They'll figure it out themselves. They've been doing that since they were 8 years old. But if you need help, they will show up without any drama, without making a production out of it, without posting about it afterward. This comes directly from forming tight bonds with friends out of pure necessity during all those hours when parents simply weren't around. And let's talk about their relationship with authority, because it's complicated. They respect competence, not titles. If you've earned your position through actual demonstrated skill, they will follow you anywhere. But if you're just someone sitting in a corner office who clearly doesn't know what they're doing, they have absolutely zero patience for you. Gen X questions authority because they spent their entire childhood watching incompetent authority figures make terrible decisions, from political scandals to fumbled public health crises to economic policies that benefited everyone except the people doing the actual work. They faced serious economic headwinds that their parents' generation never had to deal with. The youngest Gen Xers graduated college and walked straight into the dot-com collapse. The oldest ones were just hitting their professional stride when the 2008 financial crisis wiped everything out. They've been economically blindsided over and over, which is exactly why they're more likely to maintain multiple income streams, not because they're natural-born entrepreneurs, but because experience taught them that nothing lasts. Gen X tends to struggle with what some researchers have identified as patterns of extreme self-reliance that edge into anxiety. They are incredibly capable in crisis situations, but that capability often comes at a cost, an unwillingness to depend on anyone else. Research in the Journal of Adult Development shows that Gen Xers report significantly lower levels of seeking social support during stressful periods, not because they don't have people they could reach out to, but because reaching out feels like admitting defeat. This fierce self-reliance shaped how they processed information too. Before the internet changed everything, Knowledge had a different kind of weight to it. Gen X spent hours in libraries, digging through card catalog drawers, searching for a single book that might contain the answer they needed. Information had a physical cost. It demanded effort and time and patience. And because of that, they valued what they learned in a fundamentally different way. Cognitive psychologists describe this as deeper encoding, where information that requires genuine effort to obtain becomes more permanently wired into memory. They learn to fix things with their hands because that's simply what you did. When your bike chain slipped or the television started flickering, you didn't call someone. You flipped the bike upside down, got grease all over your fingers, and figured it out yourself. This built a kind of mechanical intuition, a deep-seated belief that with enough patience and a screwdriver, you could master the physical world around you. And now they're watching their own children grow up in a completely different reality. A world of helicopter parents and constant supervision and social media documenting every single moment. They gave their kids the attention and presence they never have themselves. But sometimes they worry they've made them too soft, too dependent, too exposed. Because in the Gen X worldview, being visible means being vulnerable. The truth is, Generation X might be the last generation that truly understands what it means to be alone with your own thoughts, to be genuinely bored, to solve a problem without immediately reaching for a search engine. They're not better than other generations, just different. Shaped by a unique window in history when the old world was dying and the new one hadn't quite been born yet. They are the bridge generation. And bridges don't get much attention. They're just there, quietly doing the work, holding everything together, expecting nothing in return. And maybe that's the most Gen X thing of all, not caring whether anyone notices.